Welcome to this video about the UKMLA, which is the medical licensing exam in the UK, and how to basically prepare for it. This video is specifically about the MLA exam and not how to do kind of exams in general in medical school. In this video, I'll talk about things that I did and things I wish I had done. Before I begin, I thought I'd talk about what the MLA actually is. It's basically the medical school final exams that everyone around the UK sits, and at the end of it, you get your medical license. And some people sit in 4th year and some people in final year. For myself, at my medical school, we sat it in 4th year. I started university in July, and this meant when I first started placement, it was quite new to me because we'd never been on placement before. So I actually didn't start fully preparing for this exam until January of 2026. So that gave me January, February, March, April, May, June, a good 6 months of preparation. I know some people prepare for it much longer and some people much less, but 6 months I think is quite a good sweet spot. It's what worked for me. Kind of starting off with revision, I'll talk about kind of a few of the resources that I used. The first one being Anki. Now, Anki is something that's quite, I'd say, controversial between medical students because I think some people either use it or that you don't. And throughout uni, I think I did use Anki, but not to its full extent. And what I mean by that is the way you're meant to use Anki is by doing it every single day and basically having reviews and doing the reviews every single day and learning new cards. And it's something now looking back I wish I'd done from day one because it made things so much easier and much more streamlined, but I guess you learn. So the way I'd recommend using Anki is if I was to go back, I would start Anki from day one. Now, there's a lot of YouTube videos explaining how to set up Anki and how to actually do kind of a certain number of new cards per day and reviews per day and all that kind of stuff. So after you watch this video, I'd recommend just Googling how to set up Anki and what's the best settings to use, because it varies for everyone. And even myself, I didn't use it properly when I first started using it. It was only nearly it took me a bit of time to actually get used to how to use it. And again, it worked for me, but I think it could have been even more effective if I'd just kind of used it properly in the way it's intended to be used. So that's kind of one thing. Now, with Anki, there's one deck that many people use. It's called the Spranky deck. I think it's a very good deck, and I'd recommend anyone sitting this exam to use that deck, mainly because it has things that we learn in university, but also things that I feel like we don't really get taught. And it was really good to kind of have something you're doing every single day. And I think when you start off preparing for an exam, it's all to do with consistency. It's better to be doing, little bits each day than to do a lot in a short period of time. And I think with the MLA of it being such a big exam and it being kind of medical school finals, it's something that you need to be doing on a consistent basis. So I think that's kind of one thing I wish I'd it's something I did do, but I think it's something I wish I'd started on earlier. There's a few more things I want to talk about with it. So, as I said, because you need to be so consistent with it, because it's such a big deck, the other thing is kind of quality of your revision. Now, what I mean by that is when you're going through cards, and I'll kind of show a few on screen here, when you're going through cards, you often just read it and you just move on and just memorize it. Now, if you've gotten to this point, you know that you can't just get through medicine without purely memorization. But I think when it gets to this point, when there's this much information you need to know, it can seem kind of easy to just skim over things and think that, maybe we'll go over it later. But I think with this exam, one of the biggest points I kind of got out of it is that it's not only a knowledge exam, it's about kind of how confident you are in your answers. And the only way to kind of build that confidence is from longer term knowledge. So that's kind of one thing I'd tell people is do Anki, do it very consistently, keep up with your reviews, and just really make sure you know the stuff. Now, sometimes, that can be having ChatGPT or Claude open on the side to help you understand it, or having a textbook open while you do it. Whatever works for you, whatever, you've gotten to this point, whatever works. So just keep doing that. And I'd say focus on learning the actual information. So I think with this exam, spaced repetition is such a big thing, and I think for myself and a lot of people, Anki really was that way to get that spaced repetition in a way that's not too overwhelming and something you can keep up on a daily basis. So that's the first thing I wanted to go through. Now, the second thing I want to come to is kind of question banks. Now, through medical school, I've used a few question banks, mainly just passmed and quesmed. Now, passmed is good. Okay, passmed finals is something I've used kind of from the start, which has had the clinical knowledge that you need for your exams. Now, a lot of people say that you only need to do passmed for this exam. Now, While I agree that passmed does cover a lot of bases, I don't think you're completely covered if you're just doing passmed. I do know people who've passed by just doing passmed, but I think if you want to be confident on the day, having a mix of passmed and a different question bank is something that you should be doing. I'll come on to that in a second, but to kind of reiterate about passmed, personally what I did is I used the MLA filter and I just did all hammers of questions. Now, some people I know didn't do the MLA filter. That's kind of up to you. Me, my friends all did the MLA filter and we passed fine. It just really depends. I know this year I'm making this in 2026. I think they're changing the MLA content map slightly, but again, if you do, I think passmed keeps up, it will update. So I think if you do the MLA filter, you should be fine. The passmed kind of textbook, specifically the high yield textbook, was something that was really useful as well. So I'd recommend kind of going through that, and I've made a kind of a PDF guide which you can go through as well after this video of the specific things that I mentioned on that. Coming thirdly to this, the single most important thing I think for the MLA, which I started a bit later, but I wish I'd just done earlier. So I'd say second most important. I'd say the most important is Anki. This is the second most important, but it comes with a caveat, and that is that it's a question bank called Plavable. Plavable is something that I hadn't ever heard of before nearing the end of my MLA preparations, but it's something I wish I knew. And basically, Plavable is a question bank that I'd say is one of the most similar to the actual MLA. The questions that they ask are very much similar to how the actual exam was, but I think when you're doing this question bank, I think it's something that you need to have done passmed already to understand. It's not to say you can't do Plavable from the beginning, but I think having that kind of knowledge from passmed and then going to do Plavable is something that's really good. Now, the way Plavable works is it has a must-know section, then it has a full question bank. Now, the must-know section is slightly different to, I mean, it's kind of the high-yield section, but it's slightly different to a typical high-yield section because I feel like there was questions on there that I wouldn't even think of being high-yield, but it's something you do need to know. And yeah, it was very similar to the main exam, and I'll say that much. I'd recommend anyone who's doing this exam do that. There's also a thing called Plavable Gems, which is kind of like the passmed high yield textbook. I only used that in kind of the last few months because I didn't know about it, but I think if I'd had known about it, I would have used it earlier. And one more point I wanted to make about the question banks is there's so many different available. I'd say pick one or two. For me, that's passmed and Plavable, and just stick to it. I did passmed after I'd kind of gotten a solid foundation from Anki, but I kind of again wish I would have finished it earlier. So I did finish the passmed bank once and then just started it again, but I didn't really get through many the second time round. And as I said, I only started Plavable quite late, so my recommendation would be to kind of start passmed early and get it done, and then start Plavable from there and just keep going. And that's what I would have done kind of question bank wise. So now that I've talked about kind of Anki for spaced repetition and kind of the question banks I use, the third part I want to talk about is mocks. So there's quite a few mocks available online. So firstly, the official ones from the Medical School Council, I'd say everyone should do them. There's a big one and there's some mini ones. The questions in those do somewhat reflect the real exam, but I'd say they are easier than the real exam. Again, of course, do them. There's also passmed mocks and quesmed mocks. The passmed mocks were okay. I did them. The quesmed mocks I found quite difficult, and I didn't particularly use quesmed throughout the year. The Plavable mocks were good as well, but they are actually just a mix of the question bank. So if you don't have much time and you're doing Plavable, I would recommend the mocks because that's what I did. I didn't do a lot. There's a lot of mocks on Plavable, so I did a few of them. But I think mocks wise, I only really did them in June, which was kind of really near the end of my preparation. I'd maybe have done one a bit earlier if I was to go back, but I think it's just one of those things where it is good to kind of get a baseline of your knowledge, but if you're getting spaced repetition through things like Anki and doing different topics on passmed, I think you should be fine. So that's kind of my take on kind of mocks and what I did. Other things which I used, there's a very good thing actually on passmed high yield textbook, which again I wish I knew earlier, where when you click the passmed high yield textbook, you can click a toggle that shows kind of exam importance and go through that, and that shows kind of the highest to lowest yield information. So that's something I just read through kind of the night before the exam and kind of days leading up to it. And there's other things like 0 to finals and Kiki Medics to actually learn the information. But as I've said before, you've made it to this point, you know how to learn the information. This video is purely about how to actually prepare for this exam specifically, and not how to prepare for exams generally in medical school. To kind of finish off this video, I've talked about quite a few things about how I prepared for the exam and things I wish I knew going into it. But I think the main takeaway information after sitting the exam for me was it is difficult, but you've prepared for it. And I'd say it's an exam that really tests your confidence, and it really tests your ability to work under pressure, which is what you need to be doing as a doctor basically. Because in a lot of questions, the question does just come down to two answers, and it's that knowledge that you've built up long term through things like Anki and doing these question banks over and over again that really helps you on exam day. And I feel like that's something that's so important, because on the day you'll want to change your answers, but really having that confidence of, even if you don't know exactly, you know roughly what the answer is, and you put that, trust your gut and just move on. My main advice with this exam: be consistent. You've made it this far. Yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, and best of luck when preparing for this exam.